If you have ever been to a wedding or, watched a romantic comedy or, frankly, just walked through a hotel lobby in the last 60 years, you know the sound.
Oh, yeah. You know it instantly.
It starts with those sweeping, lush strings. It sounds like pure, distilled elegance.
Absolutely. It's the audio definition of a happy ending.
It is, and then that voice cuts in, at last.
Mm.
But here's the thing about that song, the thing we really need to talk about today. It's kind of a lie.
Or at least it's a mask, a beautiful mask.
Exactly. Because if you peel back those violins and you really look at the life of the woman singing it, Etta James, you are not looking at a fairy tale.
No, you're looking at a horror story that she somehow miraculously survived.
That's the disconnect, isn't it? If at last is the sound of a dream coming true.
Then Etta James's actual life was, well, it was a nightmare she was constantly trying to wake up from.
And we're talking about a story that involved just staggering levels of abandonment, physical abuse that was framed as vocal training.
Heroin addiction, prison time, and a music industry that relentlessly exploited her while trying to sand down all her rough edges.
So today, we are doing a deep dive into the life of Jamesetta Hawkins, who the world knows as Etta James. And this is not just us reading down a discography.
No, this is a survival story. We've pulled together a whole stack of sources, biographies, session notes from chess records, court documents, and her own very candid autobiography.
And our mission today is to figure out how a woman who faced so many barriers, personal, structural, managed to channel all of that pain, all that trauma, into a voice that didn't just sing the blues.
It defined them for a generation. We want to move way past that wedding singer idea and really meet the woman they called the matriarch of the blues.
So let's start at the very beginning, because to understand her sound, that specific guttural growl she had, you have to understand where it was forged.
You really do.
And with Etta James, it starts in Los Angeles, 1938. And the circumstances of her birth, well, they pretty much set the tone for a lifetime of instability.
They absolutely do. She was born Jamesetta Hawkins, and her mother, Dorothy Hawkins, was only 14 years old.
14, just a child herself.
Barely. And because Dorothy was so young and, chasing her own chaotic life, she was often gone. Etta didn't have anything that looked like a traditional childhood.
Etta actually had a name for her mother. She called her the Mystery Lady.
And that phrase just tells you everything, doesn't it?
It really does. It's not mom. It's not mother. It's the Mystery Lady. It implies this huge emotional distance right from the start.
It speaks to a profound sense of abandonment, but it also, in a way, adds this layer of mythology to her own life. And then, of course, there's the question of her father.
Oh, this is one of those legendary details in music history that just sounds made up.
It really does. But Etta believed it until the day she died. She always speculated that her father was the famous pool player, Rudolph Wanderone.
Minnesota Fats, the greatest pool hustler of all time.
The one and only. Now, she never actually knew him. She met him very briefly in 1987, but it was never, proven with a DNA test or anything.
But just think about the psychology of that. To see yourself as the daughter of a hustler and a mystery.
It frames your whole world. So, because her mother was absent, Jamesetta was raised by foster parents. The most significant figures were a couple she called Sarge and Mama Lou.
And while Mama Lou seems to have provided some real care, Sarge is where the trauma and really the voice begins to take shape.
This is the part of the research that is just...
Yeah.
It's hard to read. It's brutal.
We tend to think of musical prodigies being nurtured. Piano lessons, a nice choir teacher.
Right, maybe a recital. But Etta's training was. It was abuse. She started vocal training at age 5 with a man named James Earl Hines.
And Hines was the musical director of the Echoes of Eden Choir, so a respected figure in the LA church scene.
Very respected. But his methods were... well, there's no other word for it. They were abusive. He saw this enormous voice inside this tiny 5-year-old girl, and he decided his job was to force it out.
And the sources describe him physically punching her in the chest while she sang.
Punching a 5-year-old in the chest.
What was the logic there, if you can even call it that?
It was about the diaphragm. In vocal training, you want the sound to come from the gut, not the head. A head voice is light and airy.
And a chest voice is deep. It's resonant.
Exactly. Hines didn't want a sweet little kid's voice. He wanted that deep diaphragm power. So he literally beat it out of her. When her breath would catch, he'd hit her to force the air out.
So that growl we all love, that power in her voice, that's muscle memory from being hit.
It is, and that wasn't even the worst of it. Her foster father, Sarge, was also incredibly abusive.
He was a gambler, right?
Yeah. He'd host these drunken late-night poker games,
Yeah.
and he would go wake up little Jamesetta, drag her out of bed at 2 or 3 in the morning, and force her to sing for his drunk friends.
And the sources say if she didn't sing or didn't sing well enough for them.
She was beaten. It says sometimes she would wet herself from fear while she was singing, and she still had to finish the song.
So when we look at her later career, what does this origin story really tell us about her relationship with her own talent?
It tells us that for Etta James, singing was never just this joyful, pure expression of art. It was a survival mechanism.
A performance under threat.
Exactly. It was a way to avoid pain. So when you hear that ferocity in her later recordings, that aggression in her phrasing, that is not just a stylistic choice. That is the sound of someone who, from age 5, was literally singing for their life.
Wow, it creates this tragic duality where the voice is this incredible gift, but it's also a trigger.
For sure.
Now, there's an interesting side note on her childhood influences. She was raised Baptist, obviously, with the choir, but didn't her mother introduce her to the Nation of Islam for a while?
That's right, a detail that often gets missed. Her mother, Dorothy, attended meetings at Temple Number 27 in L.A., and Etta, later in life, actually attended a temple in Atlanta and briefly took the name Jamesetta X.
Jamesetta X. Did she stick with it?
No. She admitted later it was mostly just a fad for something that was kind of the in thing to do at the time. But I think it shows she was constantly searching for an identity, for a community.
Which makes perfect sense, given how unstable her upbringing was.
Completely.
So let's move the timeline forward. Mama Lou passes away in 1950. Etta is about 12 years old.
And her biological mother, the mystery lady, reappears and takes her up to San Francisco, specifically to the Fillmore district.
And this is where Jamesetta starts the transformation into Etta.
The Fillmore, in the 1950s, was a hotbed of music. People called it the Harlem of the West. Jamesetta starts listening to all this doo-wop. She gets inspired.
And she forms a girl group.
She does. And they call themselves the Creolettes.
The Creolettes, that's a very specific
It
name.
was a direct reference to their skin tone. The members all had light complexions. They were just teenagers, hustling, trying to get heard.
And this leads to the moment that changes everything for her. She meets Johnny Otis.
Johnny Otis, the godfather of rhythm and blues, a huge figure.
Huge. And the story of how they met, it varies a bit, right?
Yeah, the stories conflict.
Yeah.
Otis said she came to his hotel room to audition. Another version says he saw them at a club, but the result is the same. Johnny Otis takes one look at Jamesetta and decides she's a star.
But he decides she isn't a Jamesetta.
Nope. He pulls that classic show business transposition. He just flips it.
Jamesetta becomes Etta James.
Just like that. He helps them sign to Modern Records. They change the group name to the Peaches, which was Etta's nickname. And they record a song that becomes her first massive hit. And her first massive controversy.
We are talking about the Wallflower, or as it was originally known.
Roll with me, Henry.
Right. And to understand this song, you have to understand the concept of the answer song.
Yeah, it's a lost art form. Back in the 50s, if a guy had a hit, a female artist would often record a response to it. Same melody, new lyrics, answering him. It was like a musical reply thread.
So who is she answering?
Hank Ballard in his hit Work With Me, Annie. Now, work with me was a pretty blatant euphemism for sex.
And Etta, who's what, a teenager at this point?
Just a teenager. She writes this response called Roll With Me, Henry.
And roll was also a euphemism.
A very obvious one, yeah. The censors wouldn't touch it. Radio stations refused to play it. So the label, Modern Records, forced them to change the title to The Wallflower to make it sound innocent.
And under that title.
It hits #1 on the R&B charts in 1955. Etta is barely an adult, and she has a #1 hit.
But this is where the brutal reality of the 1950s music industry just slams into her. Enter Georgia Gibbs.
Yes, this is the peak of the whitewashing era. Georgia Gibbs was a white pop singer. Her label sees that Etta has this massive hit in the black market, the R&B market.
So they just take the song.
They take the song, they clean up the lyrics even more, call it Dance With Me, Henry, and have Georgia Gibbs record it.
And because Gibbs was white, she gets all the airplay on the mainstream white pop stations that Etta could never get.
Exactly. The Georgia Gibbs version rockets to #1 on the pop charts, sold 1 million copies.
So Etta James writes this gritty, groundbreaking song, and a white artist covers it and gets the mainstream glory and, more importantly, the much, much bigger paycheck.
Etta must have been absolutely furious.
She was. She felt robbed. She literally watched someone else become famous on her work. But, and this is a nuance we have to acknowledge, there was a silver lining.
The success of the song Even the cover version raised Etta's profile enough to get her a spot touring with Little Richard.
Can you just imagine that tour bus? Etta James and Little Richard in the mid-50s? I mean, that is a lot of energy in one
I
vehicle.
think it would have been absolutely electric. And speaking of electric, there's another connection from this era that really surprised me in the research.
The Elvis connection.
Yes, Etta James shared a bill with a very young Elvis Presley.
This was in 1955 in Memphis. Elvis is 19. He's still on Sun Records. He hasn't blown up into the king yet.
Right. And Etta recalls being impressed by his manners. She said he was polite, respectful. He was just another kid trying to make it, just like her. But the story that really reveals something about Elvis and Etta's memory of him comes years later.
This involves Jackie Wilson, doesn't it?
Yes. Jackie Wilson, another legend and a close friend of Etta's. Years down the road, Jackie had a massive heart attack on stage and was incapacitated. He was at a really substandard convalescent home.
Awful.
And Etta found out later that Elvis had quietly, with no press, paid to move him to a much better facility and covered all his expenses until Jackie passed away.
And he did it without a press release.
No fanfare at all. Etta said that act of kindness really stuck with her. It's this touching little intersection of three icons, Etta, Elvis, and Jackie Wilson, that shows a bit of humanity behind the business.
So she has this initial burst of success in the 50s. She's touring, making a name for herself as this R&B shouter. But as the decade turns, her contract with Modern Records is up.
And she makes a move that defines her legacy. She signs with Chess Records.
The turning point. Chess Records in Chicago. This is the home of Muddy Waters, Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley. It is the place for gritty electric blues.
You'd think she'd fit right in. But Leonard Chess, the co-founder, had a totally different vision for Etta.
He didn't want another Muddy Waters.
No. He saw a crossover star. He saw someone who could sing pop ballads and get into the white supper clubs, not just the juke joints.
And this is where the sound just completely shifts. We go from the rough, driving R&B of Roll With Me, Henry to violins.
So many violins, string sections, full orchestral arrangements.
This was a huge risk, right? In 1960, putting lush strings on a blues singer's record that was seen as selling out by the purists.
For sure. But Leonard Chess wanted her to sound sophisticated. And in 1960, they released the album At Last.
Which included I Just Want to Make Love to You, A Sunday Kind of Love, and then in 1961, the single At Last.
And we need to be clear, At Last was a cover. It was a Glenn Miller tune from 1941. It had been done before by these big white orchestras.
But Etta's version it obliterated all the others. Why?
Yeah.
Musically, what is it about her version that just sticks with you?
I think it's the contrast. You have those smooth, almost syrup-sweet strings, which represent the fairy tale dream.
Right.
And then you have Etta's voice cutting right through it.
Right.
Even when she's singing gently, there is that grit underneath. There's that punch in the chest texture we talked about earlier.
It grounds the song. It makes the romance feel earned.
Exactly. It sounds like a woman who has been through hell and has finally found a moment of peace. It's not innocent love. It's experienced love.
And the charts reflected that, but not in the way you might think.
No, it hit number 2 R&B, but only number 47 pop. It wasn't necessarily her biggest chart hit at the time. Tell Mama did better later.
But it became her signature because it bridged that gap perfectly between pop polish and blues pain.
So she's the queen of soul. She's crossing over. Everything is looking up. But then as the 60s roll on, the music scene changes again.
The British invasion happens. The Beatles arrive. Motown becomes the dominant sound in America.
And Etta hits a bit of a slump. That lush ballad sound starts to feel a little old-fashioned by 65.
Which leads to her second great musical reinvention. In 1967, Leonard Chess sends her to Muscle Shoals, Alabama, to Fame Studios.
Ah, Muscle Shoals. That's legendary ground. Aretha Franklin recorded there, is known for that swampy, gritty, southern soul sound.
Exactly. Leonard Chess realized the strings weren't working anymore. He wanted her to get back to her roots. He wanted funk.
And it worked. It worked. She records Tell Mama. And this is a totally different Etta from At Last. This is aggressive, funky, full of brass. It's a massive comeback.
And on the B-side of that single, of Tell Mama, is a song that I think is arguably her best performance ever, even more than At Last.
I'd rather go blind.
I'd rather go blind.
I agree completely. If At Last is the dream, I'd rather go blind is the harsh reality. It is just, it's a heartbreaking slow burn of a soul ballad.
It is. It's about watching your partner leave you for someone else. But the story behind the writing of the song is just as tragic as the lyrics.
It really is. This involves her friend, Ellington Fugi Jordan.
Right. Etta writes in her autobiography that she heard the outline of the song from Fugi, but she didn't hear it in a studio.
No. She heard it while she was visiting him in prison.
She's visiting a friend in prison, and they're just workshopping a song together.
I mean, that's life she was living. She took that basic outline home and she finished writing it. It captures that deep, bluesy sense of loss perfectly. But here's the kicker, the business reality.
The songwriting credit.
When the record came out, her name wasn't on the songwriting credits.
Why? She wrote it.
For tax reasons. She was in deep trouble with the IRS. She knew if she put her name on it, the government would just garnish all the royalties. So she gave her songwriting credit to her partner at the time, Billy Foster.
She gave away the credit to one of her greatest songs. That is a massive financial loss over time.
It's huge. That song has been covered hundreds of times. Rod Stewart, Dua Lipa, Beyonce.
And Etta missed out on all those publishing royalties for years. So she didn't just sing about loss. The song itself represents this profound financial and artistic loss for her.
It is the blues personified.
And speaking of loss and darkness, we have to pivot now to what was happening off the microphone. Because while she's recording these polished ballads and soulful hits,
her personal life is spiraling completely out of control.
This is the checkered queen part of her life she was so open about. By the mid-60s, Etta is deeply addicted to heroin.
And we're not talking about, recreational use. The sources are very clear about this. She was living the life of a full-blown junkie.
It's such a brutal contrast. Here's a woman who's singing for presidents and appearing on national charts.
But she's also facing real jail time.
In 1966, she gets arrested for writing bad checks.
She was stealing from friends, forging prescriptions. She was doing whatever she had to do to feed the addiction.
She got probation, but then in 1969, she spends 10 days in jail for violating that probation. But the most staggering story from this period involves her husband, Artis Mills.
They got married in 1969, and they were both users.
They were. And at one point, they were both arrested for heroin possession, a serious charge. They were looking at hard time.
And in a move that is it's hard to even comprehend, Artis Mills took the fall. He told the police all the drugs were his.
To protect Etta, he knew she was the star, the breadwinner.
And he loved her. But the cost of that love. Artis Mills served a 10-year prison sentence.
10 years. He went to prison for a decade so that she could stay out.
It's an incredibly heavy fact to sit with. He sacrificed his freedom so she could keep her career and her freedom.
But the tragedy is, even that incredible sacrifice didn't stop her spiral immediately. It wasn't like she got clean the next day.
Not at all. In the early 70s, she's still struggling. In 1974, she's facing prison again and is sentenced to drug treatment instead.
And this leads to her time at Tarzana Psychiatric Hospital.
She spent 17 months there. She was 36 years old. She was addicted to methadone, which she was mixing with heroin. She was at absolute rock bottom.
17 months. Nearly 2 years.
She claimed later that this time in the hospital really changed her life. But it wasn't a magic fix. She struggled with substance abuse on and off for years after. But that image, the great Etta James, locked in a psych ward, it really puts the triumph of her career in a stark perspective.
It really does, which makes the comeback that much more impressive because she does come back.
But it's a slow burn. It's a long road. And one of the things that shocked me most in the research was this. Etta James, a legend since the 1950s, didn't win her first Grammy until when?
1994.
1994. It's wild. That's 40 years into her career.
It's shocking. It really shows how much the industry just took her for granted for decades. She was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1993.
Before she ever won a Grammy. Think about that. The Hall of Fame recognized her legend before the awards industry recognized her current output.
And that first Grammy wasn't even for R&B, was it?
No, it was for Mystery Lady, which was a tribute album to Billie Holiday. Best Jazz Vocal Performance.
And that really sparked a late career renaissance for her. She started touring constantly.
She did. And for any listeners who saw her in the 90s or 2000s, you might remember her band. It was a family affair.
Her sons were in the band.
That's right. Danto and Sametto played drums and bass.
That's a beautiful image. The matriarch of the blues, on the road with her boys, reclaiming her legacy.
She was finally getting the respect she deserved. She was seen as this true pioneer who bridged R&B and rock and roll. But because this is Etta James...
There's one more moment of public controversy before the end.
Oh, boy. The Beyonce incident.
2009, President Obama's inauguration. This was a huge pop culture moment.
Massive. So Beyonce had just played Etta in the movie Cadillac Records, which was a biopic about chess records.
And Beyoncé was invited to sing At Last for the Obama's first dance at the inaugural ball.
And Etta, well, Etta had some thoughts about that.
She did. A few days later, she's on stage at a concert in Seattle, and she just goes on this rant.
She said, "I can't stand Beyoncé." She said she had no business singing my song for the president. She even threatened to whoop her ass.
At the time, the media narrative was very clear. Everyone thought, wow, she's so bitter, she's jealous.
That was the headline. Bitter old diva attacks Beyoncé. But the context is heartbreaking, and it changes everything.
We didn't know it at the time.
No. It was revealed later that Etta was suffering from Alzheimer's and drug-induced dementia. Her son Danto explained it wasn't really about Beyoncé. She was just deeply hurt that she wasn't invited to sing it herself. She felt forgotten.
And the dementia meant she had no filter. It wasn't a feud. It was a symptom of her declining health.
That just puts a completely different spin on it. It's so tragic. She wanted to be the one on that stage singing her signature song for the first black president of the United States.
And she felt erased. Again, just like with Georgia Gibbs back in the 50s. At Last was her song, her survival anthem, and she had to watch someone else sing it at this huge moment in history.
But her relevance didn't fade. In fact, she found a whole new audience in the strangest place.
Electronic dance music.
The EDM connection. This is a testament to the raw, timeless power of her voice. In 2011, the DJ Avicii releases Levels.
Which was everywhere. You could not escape that song.
And the main hook, the big Vulcan drop. It's a sample of Etta's 1962 gospel-inspired track, Something's Got a Hold on Me.
Flo Rida also used the same sample for his hit Good Feeling.
Right. And it works so well in a dance track because the vocal is a cappella in the breakdown. Is just her voice, isolated.
And because of that punch in the chest technique.
Her voice has so much percussive power that it can stand up against modern synthesizers and drum machines. A vocal recorded in 1962 is driving a club anthem in 2011. It just cuts through time.
But sadly, her time was running out.
It was. Her final years were very difficult. She battled leukemia, MRSA infections, and the dementia we mentioned. And she passed away on January 20, 2012. She was 73.
And in this poetic, almost eerie coincidence, she died just a few days after Johnny Otis.
The man who discovered her and gave her the name Etta James, they came into the industry together. And in a way, they left it together.
Her funeral was a major event, Stevie Wonder sang, Christina Aguilera sang, Reverend Al Sharpton presided.
She was finally, fully recognized as the legend she was. It was the send-off she deserved.
So when we look back at this whole life, Jamesetta Hawkins, the mystery lady's daughter, the foster child, the addict, the prisoner, the matriarch, the legend, what is the big takeaway? How do we synthesize all of this?
Etta James was, as she herself put it, a checkered queen. She wasn't some polished pop star manufactured in a lab. She was raw. She was a gospel prodigy who was literally punched into greatness.
A rock and roll pioneer who saw her work whitewashed. An addict who lost years of her life to institutions.
But she survived.
That's the key word, isn't it? Survival.
Every single time you hear her sing, you aren't just hearing a melody, you are hearing the fight. You are hearing a woman who had to claw her way back from the brink over and over and over again.
So the next time you're at a wedding and the DJ puts on At Last and you see everyone swaying and smiling,
don't just hear the romance.
Hear the survival. Hear the woman who had to fight for every single one of those notes.
Hear the grit underneath the strings.
Here's a final thought to leave you with. Etta speculated her whole life that her father was Minnesota Fats, the greatest pool hustler of all time. We may never know if that's true.
But in a way, Etta was the ultimate hustler too. She hustled through trauma, through a segregated industry, through addiction, just to make sure that half a century later, we would still know her name.
It raises that timeless question. Was all that pain necessary for her to create the art she did?
Or was the art the only thing that saved her from the pain?
That's something we'll be thinking about for a long time. Thanks for listening to this deep dive into the life of Etta James.
Keep listening.
We'll catch you next time.